what are some of the lingering takeaways and headlines that you have from Alabama's win against the Bulldogs?
Like I said all week, Alabama's going to kill Georgia.
Just like you said.
Just like I said.
In a year with no quarterbacks, maybe Kirby Smart can finally win a national title. Alabama's got a quarterback, and we had him number one on 24/7 Sports as a recruit for a reason. I was not convinced he was going to get a lot of time to throw in this game, and I was wrong. Alabama switched up their offensive line. They went with a new center. They kicked Owens back out to right tackle like they tried for a little bit in the Auburn game. It worked. Georgia did not get home with their four-man rush. Georgia also did not get home with the blitz. I mean, Brian Robinson, hurt and all, is standing in there stoning those blitzers. Georgia did not get very good edge pressure. And that allowed Bryce to do what Bryce does, which is just throw dimes all over the field when he has time to throw it. And Georgia's defense so far this year, I'm not going to say they hadn't played anybody. That's not accurate, right? And they were absolutely dominant. Like, they were on pace to be a historically great defense, and still could be potentially. Although that's quite a few points to allow if you're a historically great defense. But Georgia had not faced a really good passing attack, and all the analytics guys out there will tell you, hey, defense is not as predictive as offense, right? It's a little bit less sticky. And Bryce Young stuck it to him tonight. They couldn't cover worth a damn.
Did you see Dan Mullen doing the breakdown of how to go up against Georgia's defense? It was on ESPN, and it was hilarious for two reasons. Number one, it was Dan Mullen, and he wasn't using any tape of Florida. And number two, the tape that he was using was of Tennessee, which, again, might dictate a little bit more of what we were talking about in terms of the teams that have been able to have success against Georgia, and the fact that it was Dan Mullen breaking down Hendon Hooker was the best thing we have for examples of ways that you might be able to test this Georgia pass defense. I'm so glad you mentioned Brian Robinson. I kind of feel like they kept Latu in there as well. I mean, it's just they were going to leave running backs and tight ends in to get chips on any extra rushers, and playing with tempo meant that Georgia, which utilizes that huge amount of depth on the defensive line, if you can't sub them in and out, then guess what? They're not going to be able to utilize that depth. And I think it was on Bryce Young's second touchdown pass, Jordan Davis is just standing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like he didn't even like get down in position. He didn't even get any penetration on the pocket. And that is y'all's Jordan Davis. I love Jordan Davis. He's from Charlotte. He's been fantastic. He's going to be an awesome pro. But that was a great piece of game planning. And look, we can give, I heard on the broadcast, they were giving like Doug Marrone credit. You know, Bill O'Brien's obviously the offensive coordinator. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it with the GOAT, who I've been, you know, everybody was disrespecting the GOAT. And so I'll say that this one was a little bit more of the Nick Saban special, but you don't even have to go that far outside of Alabama's own offense to be able to do this. It's not like it's a game plan they weren't capable of or a game plan that they weren't ready for. So I thought that Alabama's methods and approach to limiting what Georgia could do to Bryce Young was very, very impressive.
Yeah, I think there were a few things that were at play here. And I think that obviously, yeah, Bryce Young is the best quarterback Georgia's faced all year. Bryce Young is the best quarterback just about every team would have faced that plays this year. But I think, to me, honestly, the bigger story here is, like, I don't feel like Georgia's secondary is bad. I feel like Alabama blocked. And if you give Bryce Young 5 seconds to find an open receiver, and you give Jamison Williams 5 seconds, or any of Alabama's other receivers 5 seconds to get open, I don't care what defense they're going against. They're going to get open because, I mean, Jamison Williams, like, you see his acceleration, like on that one long touchdown. He's going against Georgia, a team filled with NFL players, a very fast defense, a team that flies all over the field, flies to the ball all season long. And he made them look like a JV squad at like a D2 school. He just ran by everybody. Nobody.
I think that was Smith, the only player to score a touchdown in Clemson, Georgia.
Yeah.
I think that was Chris Smith, and they were even.
He toasted him. He just burnt him to a crisp and got down the sideline, and he was gone. It's like, if you're not getting pressure on Bryce Young and you're giving that guy time to get open, good luck. I don't care who you are in the secondary. So I think that played a huge role. Obviously, Bryce Young has to make the throws. Bryce Young has to see the throws, and Bryce Young did a phenomenal job today. I mean, I think it's safe to say I think he wrapped up the Heisman today. I don't think I feel like, people will probably complain that it's just, it's going to be recency bias, but he was the favorite coming into today at every single sports book you looked at. And then after that performance against that defense, I don't see how he's not going to win it.
I think Bryce, Tom, honestly, probably wrapped it up in the fourth overtime against Auburn, unless they just got their doors blown off today. But I don't love talking scheme a ton on the pod because I feel like we almost need a video element where we could draw some stuff up. But if you look at it, and I'm glad you mentioned the Mullen thing, Chip, because I didn't see that, but I did see some similarities in some of the stuff that Bama was doing to Georgia that Tennessee also did to Georgia. They did a lot of stack release stuff out on the outside. It was fairly clear to me that Georgia didn't feel like it could play man-to-man on the back end as much as maybe Kirby Smart would want to. And they tried to play a lot of their pattern match stuff, which obviously is not just, spot drop and zone, like they're matching patterns and then converting essentially to man-to-man. You guys know this. I'm not sure all the comment section does. Condense, it's basically kind of matchup zone type principles if you guys watch hoops at all, which Chip and Tom probably watch more hoops than I do. So they busted a couple uncharacteristically. I'm sure that's Saban recognizing, hey, this is something they don't pass off very well. I taught this guy my defense when we use this formation, this route combo. They don't seem to play it very well. But I also, look, guys, Auburn gave them trouble by playing a whole lot of press and blitzing. LSU gave them trouble by playing a whole lot of press and blitzing like crazy. Georgia did not play a lot of press in this game and blitz. It was they played a lot of off coverage. I was a little surprised by that. To me, how Georgia played this kind of indicates maybe what Kirby Smart thinks about his secondary. This is an all-timer of a front seven. Are we going to look back and say, hey, that was one of the best secondaries in the SEC in a while? I don't know. It might just be a decent secondary and a really, really awesome front seven. And Bryce Young turned that thing into 7-on-7.
How much credit do you give to Alabama's defense in this performance? Because I thought that in the first half, Georgia was doing a pretty good job of moving the ball, and then it seemed to kind of get away. I don't know. I was going to say, there is another side of the ball, and I know that Bryce Young threw for the most yards of any quarterback in SEC history, and the fact that you find yourself in a hole forced Stetson Bennett and this Georgia offense to be in an uncomfortable position. But do you think that there was ever a moment where once Georgia started to fall behind that you thought that the Bulldogs were going to be able to get it done?
No. I mean, I don't think Alabama played lights out defensively, but it played well. Like it wasn't a killer performance. I mean, Georgia did have 450 yards. Stetson Bennett threw for 340, but really the only thing Georgia had consistently was Stetson Bennett to Bowers, like up the seam. Like Georgia really wasn't able to get anything anywhere else. The run game, they were held at 3.6 yards per carry. Cook wasn't able to do much of anything. McIntosh couldn't do anything. Zamir White didn't do anything. And Alabama was also able to, kind of bait Stetson Bennett into a couple interceptions that he probably shouldn't have thrown, and that kind of killed drives. I felt like it wasn't. I feel like maybe the game plan was we're fine giving them this to Bowers if we take away everything else, and that's kind of what they did. And Bowers had a huge game because Bowers is a matchup nightmare for most people, and he's just a tremendous athlete. So he was able to make some plays and get 10 catches for 139 yards, but there just really wasn't a option B available to the Bulldogs in this game. There was no consistency from them from play to play and drive to drive, and there was nothing they could really rely on and say, okay, this is the play. We can go to this when we need to get a first down or when we need this. There was nothing. There was none of that there for them.
So maybe Cook could chime in there if you guys don't remember. When is the last time we discussed, hey, do you think Stetson Bennett is capable of bringing Georgia back if they're down multiple scores? I think it's probably like a couple weeks ago, but definitely we didn't bring it up after Ohio State lost, because to me, Ohio State was the one offense, and I still have them as the number one offense in my power ratings by a ton, that was really capable of doing this to Georgia. But we got in this situation tonight, and no, I agree with you guys. I don't have confidence in Stetson Bennett bringing them back from big deficit. The kid was a walk-on for a reason. I think they're fine with Stetson Bennett if Bama can't block for Bryce Young. If Bama can block for Bryce Young, Stetson Bennett's not fine. Now, he could beat Alabama. If they rematch him, Georgia might even be favored again, to be honest. I don't know if the power ratings are going to swing that much. They might. But down multiple scores, this kind of game script opportunity, he doesn't make a whole lot of special plays, and he does, for all this taking care of the ball narrative, make some bad ones.
But, I don't put this on Bennett, though. I thought, all things considered, he played pretty well. One thing that stood out to me, and it's hard really when you're watching on TV because you don't get the full picture, but like what I was talking about earlier, like with Alabama, when Bryce Young had time, his guys got open. I felt like when Stetson Bennett did have time in the pocket, he was standing there waiting for people to get open who were not getting open nearly as often as Alabama's receivers. And I think that kind of forced him to have to make some throws he didn't really want to make or maybe just scramble. But I feel like that's one of the things that George is lacking too. Like we talked about it all year without George Pickens, and Pickens was back today and he was back last week, but he's clearly not up to full speed yet. And they don't really have that kind of game-breaking receiver like a Jamison Williams type. And I think that hinders them just as much as having Bennett and not having Bryce Young does.
Tom, I agree with you on that. I was surprised at how often Stetson Bennett was turning to the sideline and be like he was. It was like they were confused. I do think that Bama kind of outcoached him today, right? And came up with answers that Georgia couldn't match. It's one game though, right?
Yeah, I was going to say. So, what's the overreaction? Like,
according to Danny, Georgia shouldn't even be in the playoff because they've sucked all season long.
That text thread tonight was loud.
No, it's me and Danny were arguing in the text thread, but we were just both trolling each other.
Yes, no, Tom had his troll gun loaded. He was.
Danny's was loaded too.
Yeah, well, I mean, always, but we were talking about Notre Dame, and then we had to take it over to Georgia. But I wonder that in the Georgia fan base, and I haven't dipped my toe in to see how the feels are, but in the SEC world, like, does this fall at Kirby Smart's feet? Like, what does this do for Dan Lanning? And I think the most important thing, because those are all just sort of like intangible, feely, emotional things, except for maybe Dan Lanning's candidacy for other coaching jobs, depending on how things go in the next, couple weeks. But we have to make some kind of adjustment to the way that we talk about Georgia as Georgia, and push back if you want as Georgia moves ahead to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So as we move Georgia forward, what does that adjustment look like? Like, what do we look at Georgia as now that the Bulldogs have taken their first loss of the season?
The second best team in the country. Maybe still the best. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game has some like signature significance, right? To where now that you've seen the matchup, this is an elite offense, the only one that Georgia's faced, and Georgia had more problems with this than it had in like every other game combined, which is not entirely surprising. I am surprised that Bama beat them down like they did. If they do rematch, which is certainly possible, I think you'll have to see Georgia take more chances on defense, try to get more hands on guys early. I don't think they rerouted guys tonight very well. Jamison Williams is a really good player, but he's not a real physical guy off the line of scrimmage, right? He's kind of skinny. Now,
not the
on,
most
on punt coverage is great.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's a guy that wants to get in that route and build that speed up. Auburn got hands on him. LSU put hands on the guy. Georgia didn't do that very well. And that is part of why they lost tonight. I think you'll have to see them try to play a little more press stuff in the rematch and live with the consequences. The consequences might be explosive plays allowed. Checking my box score here, it appears that there were some explosive plays allowed tonight already. So I think you'll deal with that.